Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. We're so happy to have you for session 80 of Roadmap for a Moral Society. We are continuing our subject that we left off last time. Unfortunately, it's actually a very long subject, so if we could please go straight to the title page of it, we can show the subject for everyone to see. We welcome you as we are discussing many subjects, one of which is prohibition of attachment to this world and to its wealth and fleeting benefits. You may all ask why this is so important. Well, it is typical in a process we get involved in that we have disinterested persons, people who are interested only in the outcome being fair, just, and otherwise intent on achieving the purpose for which they are there, not intent on receiving bribes, not intent on receiving any other form of remuneration other than performing the good act itself. Now, this idea of a good world, we believe, is formed on the basis of morals, hence the subject of our discussion over the series that we've engaged now 79 previous episodes. This is number 80. So with that being said, we welcome all of you to join us as we embark on this subject for today. And we thank Mr. Gilbert Hakim for putting together these PowerPoint slides that we're reviewing and we are using to not just discuss, but to learn from each other as we share our ideas, our personal opinions, and our reflections as we try to incorporate a little bit of this little by little in our own lives. We believe, in short, that this will be, if we can apply these things in our lives, this will be the solution to the problems in our own lives, thereby following it in our own lives, the lives of everyone around us, and society as a whole. With that said, we are looking forward to the opening prayer, and hopefully one of us has volunteered in the
All right, I'll
meantime.
volunteer.
Thank you, Armin. Please.
O my Lord and my hope, help thou thy loved ones to be steadfast in thy mighty covenant, to remain faithful to thy manifest cause, and to carry out the commandments thou didst set down for them in thy book of splendors, that they may become banners of guidance and lamps of the company above, wellspring of thine infinite wisdom, and stars that lead aright as they shine down from the supernal sky. Verily art thou the invincible, the almighty, the all-powerful.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to start with reading these paragraphs. Before we start, I just want to clarify something. There are some suggestions that the talks that we have relates to downgrading a political system or a religious group or a particular country or particular head of state. The purpose of these conversation is not even to promote Baha'i religion at all. What we're doing here is scientifically looking at laws to see whether they're efficient cause. That means that people that apply it, they benefit from it, and people that violate it gets harmed. So question really, that's all we're examining. So this is really not interpretation or my interpretation, the examples that I bring in to show those elements, whether it's a religious group, doctrine, political system, affiliation of any sort, those are just examples. So all we're trying to prove here is that these tablets are true. Now, in artificial intelligence and machine learning language, the outcome is binary. That means either it's true or it's false. There's nothing in between. So when we bring an example, those examples are statistics or available information related to people that violate or adhere to these laws. And that's how you can prove whether the law is efficient, that means it works, it benefits humanity, or it doesn't, it causes harm. And that's all we're trying to posit, basically. So, and I try to refrain from interjecting my opinion into it. The examples that we bring up, it's already available either on Google or basically available in publications. So there is really nothing made up from an opinion perspective. Hopefully this clarified, and we're not against any race, religion, a country, political system, or economic system. We're just giving examples of any of those conditions that we present gets violated or adhere to, what are the outcome? And this had nothing to do with anybody's opinion, or adherence to a particular religion has nothing to do with the religion itself, because it's the interpretation of that religion. When we're talking about Muslim countries, we're talking about people that interpret the Holy Quran, and they cause problems if it seems to be a problem. Or they may follow and they benefit from it. So these are just examples, and there is no prejudice against any doctrine as a whole. Excellent. So let's read on.
I'll start us off.
Okay.
The world truly is a scene of toil and trouble. Its hardship surpasseth its ease. Its harm transcendeth its benefit, and its weariness exceedeth its delight. It is beloved of the heedless and abhorred of the sagacious. Ease and fidelity therein are even as the elixir, while its affliction is beyond all reckoning. Man beholdeth therein that which is loveth not to see, and consorteth therein with those whom he wisheth not to meet. Were it of any estimation, thou wouldest behold me seated upon its throne. And were it of any worth, he who is its maker and its king would not have turned aside therefrom. Leave it unto such as have set their affections upon it. Beware lest ye be afflicted by its sorrow, or delighted by its treasures. Its glory is abasement, its wealth is poverty, and its permanence is ephemerality. Where is the magnificence of Parviz and his store of purest gold? Were the splendors of the Pharaohs and their palaces that soared aloft, and were the riches of the tyrants and their warriors arrayed in ranks? Wert thou to gaze today on Khosrau's palace, thou wouldest behold it a home unto the spider and the owl. Take heed then, O ye that are endued with understanding.
All right. So here we're discussing the world truly is scene of toil and trouble. See, as you grow in a society, you have to adapt to culture that you're born in, and you have to examine and survive in that environment based on standards that the society expects from you, whether it's right or wrong. So you have to deal with self-preservation and creating an environment for yourself to be able to provide for yourself. So, and during this process, you have to interact with other people that have the same goal. And not everybody is obviously keen to help you to get where you want to go. So that's one process in terms of economically adjusting to the environment that you're in. And these are very, very important from that perspective. And of course, then you have to deal with accidents and sickness and troubles related to your family, loved ones, and going through that process to train yourself and learn to adapt yourself to the environment to have a fruitful life in general. So obviously, majority of our efforts is toil, and of course, it generates a roadmap for our future. So it says its hardship surpasseth its ease. This obviously amount of time that you get disappointed, whether it was a goal that you didn't reach or a talent that you wish you had, or material things, or relationship that you wanted to build that failed, surpasses, those hardships surpasses the times that you feel comfortable and safe. So this is really is fairly obvious in majority of our lives. So the harm transcended its benefits, because the benefit that it brings in, if it's material, is short-lived. Whether you have a nice meal or have enough resources to entertain yourself and your surroundings, and save for the future, those benefits that this hardship to achieve it, obviously the return on investment is not there. And so let's examine and the amount of disappointment, weariness exceeds delight. So the amount of time that it makes you happy is much smaller than the amount of time that you're toiling, basically. And you're concerned about your future, whether it's health or ability to survive in your old age. So it is beloved of the heedless and abhorred of the sagacious. So people that are sage and knowledgeable, they don't really pay attention to it. And is beloved of heedless, people that want to accumulate all the time, and their effort gets wasted on just accumulating wealth. So ease and fidelity therein are even as the elixir, while its affliction is beyond all reckoning. So with this fidelity therein, and even as the elixir, so it's addictive, basically. It's an elixir that wants you to have more of it. While in affliction, the causes that it brings in for you to achieve that is beyond all reckoning. So this balance is very important at this place. There's a Persian proverb that says that whoever has more rooftop is going to collect more snow. So it's really reflective of the more you're entangled with generating wealth, the less time you have to put aside for things that matter most, because the most valuable commodity we have is time. Because every second that we spend, it doesn't matter how much money you spend, you can't buy it back. So the key here is the ability to assign your time to sufficient actions that brings you happiness for eternity, versus accumulating wealth, which robs you from ability to functions and promote basically humanity, promote advancing civilization in general. And of course, in the Baha'i doctrine, that is the teaching, basically. So if this accumulation of wealth is robbing you from opportunity to teach, obviously is not sanctioned. So here again, man beholdeth therein that which he loved not to see, and consorted therein with those whom he wished not to meet. So the question again, this process people would migrate toward what they like and consort with those people that they have common interest. Obviously, this process creates an environment that you would be segregating yourself and be around people that have the same opinion as you do. And obviously, you're not going to expand your view of reality when you do that. Were it of any estimation, thou wouldest behold me seated upon its throne. And this is really interesting, that obviously manifestations of God, if that was the goal of humanity, they would be the one that would be able to achieve that, because they had all the knowledge and power to gain riches as they desired, but they shunned that. And were it of any worth, he who is its maker and its king would not have turned aside therefrom. So obviously the messengers of the God would not give from God the law to turn away from becoming chasing basically material things in general. And you see, none of the manifestations had any wealth. And of course, in their books, they promote staying away, because there are a lot of harm is hidden, is accumulation of wealth. So leave it unto such as have set their affections unto it. Be aware lest ye be affected by its sorrow. So if your goal in life is to accumulate wealth, obviously at one point or another, you experience the sorrow or delighted by its treasures. Do you know average millionaire in the United States has been bankrupt at least 5 times. So you see an example of which is presents that if people are putting all their efforts to accumulate wealth during this process, they have to fail so many times to basically reach their destination. So this afflicted by its sorrow at least 5 times, or delighted by its treasure. Its glory is abasement, its wealth is poverty, and its permanence is ephemerality. So it's passing by. So this is, no one can take their wealth or property with them. So we're gonna live in this life in a short period of time, and a lot of it gets spent in terms of trying to survive and produce and be self-sufficient. But if majority of our time is spent on accumulating wealth, we can't exercise the attributes that is inherent in us that we can take with us when we leave this plane of existence. So increasing our spirit through exercise and following the laws of the manifestation, which in this term the process of exercising these laws, which in Christian term they call it Holy Spirit, is the one that elevates your soul. And all those attributes has to be developed, whether it's love, purity, forgiveness, philanthropy, again, helping others, truthfulness, and so on and so forth, would be set aside when you're chasing wealth. So this is the segment that manifestation is trying to alert us to be aware of, that if you strictly go after something that you cannot carry with you for your eternal life, obviously will not be valuable. And you're losing your precious time of developing your character. It goes to accumulate wealth that is it's transient. So where is the magnificence of Parviz and his store of purest gold? Where the splendor of the Pharaohs and their palaces that soared aloft? And where the riches of tyrants and their warriors arrayed in ranks? Wert thou to gaze today on Khosrau's palace, thou wouldest behold it at home unto the spider and the owls. Take heed then, O ye that are endued with understanding. So as we look at the history, caverns of gold and the splendors of the pyramids of pharaohs and palaces, all gone. And the riches of tyrants, none of them took any of it with them. And those soldiers that were fighting for the tyrants, where are they now? And of course, these are some of the related to Khosrau, king of Persia, thou wouldest behold it at home unto spider and the owl. So it's a survival, and the spider makes webs that is basically can be destroyed with a wind. Okay, so and if you understand this, it's fairly simple to know, even if you generate wealth, you have to use it to propagate the word of God and try to disseminate that for the purpose of advancing civilization. And during that process, you elevate your soul. So these are very important in terms of, for example, Abdul Baha mentions that rich people should, with their own will, distribute their wealth to the poor and needy. Not by force, because that is the mechanism that it elevates their soul. Very well. Any comments on this side?
Well, I'm just happy I learned that I haven't declared enough bankruptcies. I'll have to start working on that.
Yeah,
I
that's
guess when I win the Powerball lottery, I'll give away half of the $1 billion I'll win, and then I guess
all right.
do whatever I need to do.
But you see, this says that not having it is you're more happy than the person that chased it. And that's really the key. Creating a balance.
Well, I saw Taylor Swift's boat today on Facebook coming through a bridge, and I'll tell you what, that looked pretty nice. Helicopter and 200 feet long. Can't be bad for a 25-year-old or whatever she is. And she gives a lot of wealth away. And then I heard some stories when she went into one town. She fed everybody that was homeless, and she did a whole bunch of things that people don't hear about, but she doesn't want to make public. But I thought that was pretty neat.
You know about the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos?
Yeah. She gave 26 billion or million away or somewhere, and
yeah, yeah.
And he's mad at her. She gave the money away.
But remember, you see, that's the whole point. They spend tens of millions of dollars on buying yachts that they would maybe spend few days of the whole year on it, just to show other people that they have it. But the whole point, they have to deal with the consequences of how to operate it, make sure everything is there, it doesn't sink, they have to repair it, and so on and so forth. So it's not all flashy. It sounds reasonable when you look at the grass on the neighbor's side, which is green. But really maintaining it is, and this is really the whole point. It's with greater wealth comes greater dangers and greater responsibilities. And not too many people can escape its elixir, the trap of wealth.
I don't know if you ever heard this guy's name. There's a guy by the name of Nick Hanauer. He's a billionaire, lives out over on the West Coast. And he talks about, there should be a better tax system than we had. He says he doesn't mind paying his taxes because it's paying for, things that we need, like police, fire, road repair, and all that kind of stuff. He talks about something called pitchfork economics, where instead of trickle down economy, it's sort of like middle out, where, you have the proper taxation. I think it was, as described in Keynesian economics, if you, study such a thing, but his podcasts are quite intriguing and interesting. He also has a TED talk out there too.
Yeah, it's very interesting, but the economics is a very complex matter and taxation, and they have made a lot of
If I may point some things out,
sure.
the Baha'i writings tell us that we are to seek spiritual solutions to economic problems. And we already understand from having looked at the passages prior that when we're talking about what we are attracted to, our hearts, we're trying to focus on things that are godly. So if we are trying to every single day pray that we are attracted more to God and God's attributes as they're manifested in this realm of existence, we think about things such as honesty, truthfulness, righteousness, these things that we can hold in our hand, so to speak, that we can tangibly understand. Yes, they're abstract to an extent, but their expression in this world is not very abstract to us when we would otherwise suffer if we don't have them. So I think we can talk about these important things that we want to see in the world, and our economic format be around these things that we must have. I'll explain very shortly. If you consider anyone who gets food, tell me if you want food that has bugs or diseases on it. Do you want that? And this is for anybody to answer.
No, you don't.
They're not.
I do.
I don't want
I do
to.
too.
I don't want to get sick. I don't want to have diarrhea. I don't want to vomit out the food I just had. I want to be feeling good when I eat my food. I want to be healthy. So we all can agree that it's reasonable to outlaw certain treatments of food that would potentially poison people, namely putting poison on food. If someone puts poison on your food in a very direct sense, you should put them in jail because that's a bad act. And then if someone negligently makes it such that poison goes on your food, if it warrants it, maybe they should go to jail too. But this is something that we think about as a deterrent so people don't engage in that act, so people focus on doing the right thing. So we have laws already that exist to deter certain actions. But if we are having a economic solution that is based on spiritual principles, the premise is that I'm going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because I'm going to go to jail if I don't do it. So the whole paradigm is different in terms of what the Baha'i faith is offering, that is neither embracing any form of communistic ideals, neither is it embracing truly a free market, neither is it embracing, in theory, capitalism. It's not embracing any of these principles when you have values that are rules that regulate how you operate. So in short, yes, you may have a free market where people will freely transact, but that transaction occurs within the paradigm of morals. So what I mean to say here, in short, is we've been talking about these ideas, but those issues are not the solution. Yes, those are issues. Those need to be resolved. However, if we are to solve them for all time as we know it, it would be prudent to focus on these teachings that we have that would stop these bad things from happening. So in an example, if there is a contract that one has with someone, and it's very clear that we're not going by the contract, can we agree that it's wrong to do that? If you made an agreement, should you follow through with what you agree with, or should you just do whatever you want? This is open for everybody.
Well, you're bound by the terms and conditions of the contract. That's,
But,
from a legalistic point of view. So yes, you follow the contract.
well, the answer is, should you? Should you? Not that you're bound, but should you?
Yeah, because if other people don't have confidence in what you say you're gonna do, then society is gonna start to break down.
So we're living in a society right now where people sign contracts and they don't abide by those contracts. And maybe even both sides don't abide by the contract. And it's okay. This is something that happens all over. You can find it in publicly traded corporations. You can find it in public filings that are easily searchable in the SEC records, in the Edgar database here in America, United States. We have Edgar database. You can look up public filings where people are posting statements. You can find it for the public shareholder statements that are made in the stock exchanges, so you can be informed before you invest your money in stocks. But you know how many people with all the information available really look at all these information to determine whether there's enough benefit that goes against the risk in a cost benefit analysis, as we rightly and reasonably should? Very few people do that. We rely on these little tiny stamp size statements or one paper statements that in theory explains the entirety of what's going on, when in fact we don't know anything. People like this, by the way, which is a lot of people, the majority of people, are the ones who also invested in stocks that were AAA rated, that, you know what, during the recession, they were worth nothing, because these AAA rated items were not really actually AAA worthy. They were garbage. So people had mortgages that weren't paid, and these mortgages got, wrapped into these security packages that people didn't really understand they were buying. And then you had people that lost their retirement because they invested in the wrong place, or they worked for the wrong company, that their pension was no longer available because the company went belly up. This is a reality in whatever market we work in. Wherever we are, this is a reality that's going to happen. Even in a moral society, things go wrong. But what we can in a moral society count on is that without being taxed, that your brother doesn't want to see you, your sister doesn't want to see you in poverty, they will help you to get out of poverty because it's the right thing to do, not because the government is coming in and telling them to give you money. So I just want to have a perspective here that we should take. We are talking about, as we've been speaking until now, spiritual solutions. Everything that I've heard until now has been talking about regulation, has been talking about, just issues and looking at things from the lens of what a person in modern society thinks. That is an average person. But the premise is that the Baha'i teachings come to introduce us to a new solution, not to use the same stuff that doesn't work. So the reality is that if we can employ and follow the instructions, employ these instructions that Baha'u'llah has given us, if we can actually attempt to consult in a group with the spirit of love and compassion and patience, speak with one another about a potential for resolution, we can actually get to that resolution together. And an example Abdul-Baha gives us, and some answer questions actually, is that the disciples of Christ, when they were going to go and teach the faith of Christ in the very beginning, they engaged in spiritual consultation. But the funny thing here is that they actually acted on what they decided. Of course, we know that these disciples met their death. A lot of them they suffered, but they suffered to grow the faith of Christ. And going back to the time of Christ as an example for all of us to look at, because these people consulted and achieved spiritual consultation, where they talked about what should be done, we need to get up and teach the faith of Christ. That may mean we have to abandon our families to do so. That may mean we have to get up now and go and meet our own deaths to do so, to spread the word. But you know what? They did all that. They made the hard decision that people today are unwilling and unable to make. So until we are able to make hard decisions, that may mean that we are at a disadvantage, that we are going to suffer because what we think we love is not in line with what we should be loving, we're going to suffer more. And in short, if we are able to sacrifice what we think we love for what these instructions are that's given to us to achieve what we actually love, we will in turn actually benefit and be happy. So I hope that made sense what I just said, because it doesn't connect all the time. When people think about the idea of sacrifice, they think about the pain that sacrifice entails at first, but they don't think about the reward that comes. So I'll end with this idea. When you have someone plowing the field, working hard, or using now heavy machinery to go and plow the fields, someone is out there working to do the job so that we, all of us can eat that food that is eventually grown when that field has flourished with plant life, with vegetables, corn, what have you. That being said, it takes someone to work to get there, sacrifice. We all have to sacrifice. So I appreciate the moment that I had to talk about this. But going back to the subject so we can continue the discussion here, I think it's really important for all of us as we're trying to think about all this dicta that we have in our minds, that we focus on these writings that we have before us and how we can apply them to our society so that people can maybe have an idea of what the world could look like, not necessarily just simply complaining about what's going on and not having any solutions. So did we read this quote in front of us? Did someone read it?
Not yet. This is just description of what we read before. It's good to read it. It's a pretty simple explanation related to Sassanid monarch. So
just to clarify, I'm sorry, the word elixir is defined in the dictionary to mean a magical or medicinal potion, a particular type of medicinal solution. That is what the word elixir means.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness for clarifying that, because it's how you know, elixir is a positive thing, but if you use it in the wrong way, it can become addictive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we were talking before regarding Parviz. This is the name of a Khosrau Parviz, which was one of the monarchs of the Sassanid dynasty. And he was amassing gold, and when they moved his loot from one building to the other in a period of time, he accumulated 468 million mesqals of gold valued at 375 million gold sovereign. So here, obviously, he didn't take any of it with him when he passed on. So these are key elements. And when you're looking at the ruins of his palaces, Ark of Khosrau is subject to famous poets. Whatever is left of his imperial palace is just an ark that was left. So this may be teaspoon, which is where the location of those that castle, or that basically that king's domain, where he was domiciled. So here, and the reference to the spider that we looked at was obviously it's a dwelling which a simple wind would wipe it out, and that's why the reference to the spider web, which is the home of the spider, and obviously owls were referenced to basically bad omen. So these are really key references from the previous paragraph that we read. So the bird of ill omen, and associated with scenes of desolation. And of course, there is a reference from Lohe Sultan that Akka was the most desolate area in the whole world, and the air was so foul that even the birds that were flying over would die and fall down. It was that bad. So this climate was so foul, and obviously manifestation of God spent quite a bit in prison in that desolate area. And guess where he came from? He was a son of a minister, very wealthy, and he was offered a governmental job with unlimited wealth, but he refused, and he spent all his life in poverty, actually. And
well, I think it's important to mention before he ended up living in poverty what he did when he had a lot of wealth.
yeah, of course, he was custodian of the poor. And
yeah, he was actually called the father of the poor.
Right.
So it's you know, a lot more, not just a custodian where it's a duty, but with love. He was the father of the poor. So they would treat him again as father of the poor, not just, you know, like faceless, or what do you call it? Not like some guardian that's like aloof, but the father, someone that takes you in and is kind and loving.
So the point here is that not his wealth, which eventually it was basically destroyed by his opponents and ransacked basically all his wealth of his family. And of course, he put in jail, and then without any food, they had to move them in basic winter with mules moving from Tehran to Iraq during the dead of winter, which many of his followers died in the process. And actually, there's a story related to they ran out of money and they were selling the gold buttons of Baha'u'llah's wife to basically be able to feed the entourage during this process. So many of his followers actually froze to death during this journey as well. So you see someone living the luxury of being son of a minister and offered one of the highest position in the government with all the wealth that would come with it, left that just to educate humanity. And nothing deterred him from pursuing his goal in terms of dissipating the word of God. So these are examples that we need to learn from in terms of what is valued and what can we carry with ourselves after passing this fleeting time that we have on this earth. All right, let's look at the next one. Just to add what John was mentioning, these laws are designed to make this transition from where we are to the evolutionary and revolutionary process that occurs when technology changes the market and governments and humanity is not ready to deal with it. And the same way that during, for example, industrial era, that they basically ignored in mid-1800, ignored the revelation of God that would have suppressed many atrocities that occurred in terms of capitalism, which had no regulation whatsoever. Young people, young kids of ages of 5 or 6 years olds were working 12 hours a day in factories just to feed themselves and their family. And there was no regulation whatsoever. And you created barons, atrocities that occur from colonialism, for example. These are all byproducts of not applying the Holy Spirit that came from that age to prevent those atrocities to occur, those malfunctions and misapplication. So because capitalism is amoral, it doesn't have any moral stance, is the application of capitalism that is done by humans that is causing problems. And if it's not regulated through spiritual instructions, it's going to cause harm. Now, the same process occurred. The reason I'm wasting you guys' time to just listen to these laws is not because it's nice to know, or just if you follow it, you would be happy. The problem we're facing, the same cycle of revolution that occurred during industrial age is happening now. People are not aware of it. And this process slowly is occurring in such a way that within next decade, you're going to see artificial intelligence and robotics would eliminate 50% of the jobs that people have today. 50% of it. And we're not talking about 100 years from now. You're talking about maybe about a decade, maximum about 12 to 15 years. And the reason is this, and people think that if you increase the basically salaries of hourly workers, obviously you make their life easier now. But what you do, you accelerate that process. If you were talking about, for example, robotics, currently, I'm not sure if you looked at these manufacturings of the largest market and industry in the world, which is transportation. If you look at the manufacturings of cars, you look at it, it was interesting. I saw a picture from one of the factories in California. There were only 2 carbon-based people in the whole factory that was producing cars. Only 2. And why was that? Is because the cost of labor currently, with about $250,000, you can actually buy a robot. That means that if you take let's say, a 5-year life expectancy with the maintenance of it, you're talking about $10,000 a month. So a robotics arm today may cost, let's say, about $50 an hour or about $60 an hour. So it still is a lot more expensive. That's why they replace the high end of the labor market. But if you're familiar with the curve, the basically S curve, which the cost of automation is coming down in less than between 10 to 15 years. You're going to see the menial work, and remember that the robotics doesn't take vacations, it doesn't get tired, it doesn't ask for raise. So what ends up happening, the cost of those robotics, even for let's say a cook in the kitchen, would be probably anywhere from $15 to $20 an hour. So when it reaches that point, you're going to have massive unemployment unless you inject these laws that is brought by manifestation of God in terms of applying it to transition, so people don't become desolate or don't go through revolution because they can't feed themselves. So those processes are not in place today, and only spiritual method would eliminate those problems. So they expect, for example, even within the next 15 years, electric cars would cost about $15,000 to make, both through automation and basically battery technology. So if this is the case, majority of, you're talking about 12-year period, majority of the largest manufacturers of automobile would be out of business, because their cost structure, which is mostly tied to labor, would be replaced by automation. So this is the urgency to make sure that this spiritual solution gets amalgamated with the advancement in the automation and robotics to make this transition smooth enough so there is a safety net that takes care of those people that has to be retrained. Now, in the old method, the cheapest, for example, labor market, which is China, or third world countries in general, now China produces most of the exports. Actually, the largest exporter of the world or manufacturing of the world is China today. But imagine what kind of upheaval is going to be created in China 10, 12 years from now, if they can't find jobs for everybody to do. Imagine 700 million people out of a job. How are you going to feed them?
There's an issue with this, and don't get me wrong, what you're saying is completely correct in the context that jobs are going to disappear as we know them. And that's not a question. The question is when, if anyone has that question. The issue is, and I have this gentleman who's not here today, Mr. Antonio Lorenzo, made a speech publicly in the University of South Florida, questioning people and sustainability, how they're going to be dealing with this. No one really on a public forum really has the answer, unfortunately, that you want to ask these questions to actually try to say what's next, how can we overcome the current hurdle we see ahead of us. The big issue that we have as persons wanting to see a better world is this idea of uncertainty that was mentioned, and this is one of them. The issue that we have at the same time is alternatives to do otherwise. So in this case, we understand that jobs are going to disappear, but I want to point out something, that we have jobs that people don't want to do that are needed, and robots haven't been able to be employed to replace them.
Currently, right. You're right.
We may have Optimus, for example. Optimus, a robot that can come, humanoid robot, can come and clean your house for you. But the reality is, what I'm saying, we need people to clean places. We need people to take care of things. We have bridges across the United States of America that are not under repair, because they're not being repaired. What's the term? They need to be repaired, and they're not repaired.
No, you're looking at a tangent type of environment.
I'm simply trying to say, if you look at how we are in the United States and some of the things we can learn from other countries, such as people in Japan, who they teach their children to clean the classroom. They teach the people to clean places. I'm saying, surely, if we are to contemplate things that we're not doing because we're too lazy, we can think about actually doing those things that we're not doing as a society.
No, look, what you're doing is trying to find a home for those people, but what you're discussing is a marginal work. I assure you, a particular.
So you're defining work that employs a lot of people to be something that produces a product that can be then used, and commercial transaction in order to fund it also be available, so people need it, so they'll pay for it. Is that what we're talking about in terms of what would create jobs?
No. Okay. Automation in general. You know what? We started with eliminating the most expensive people in the automotive industry, which is the largest industry in the world. right? Now
Yeah.
robotics is taking their jobs away at a very, very high rates. Now you don't see this issue yet in the United States, but reality doesn't change.
I mean, major car corporations are using robots to do most of the work already. We have one
Correct.
of the newest ones,
But this is the whole
electric cars,
point.
doing that.
When you're dealing with S-curve, that means that technology is going to seep into the lower cost labor, because those robots are going to be cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
Well, in theory, if you have a humanoid robot to do work for you, it's even better.
That's
But
the point. But
Okay. All right.
you're
I have an
missing.
answer. I have an answer for both of you. Today in the Wall Street Journal, I had my hand raised, but you guys talked for 20 minutes, so I had to interrupt you. The Wall Street Journal showed the restaurants that today are 100% automated. These people warned the governor, they warned the politicians. They said, if you go over $15 an hour, we're all going to cut loose. We're not going to do it. Today, they opened up 10 restaurants, 100% automated, 100% of the beef. You go in, you hit your face recognition, you hit a buttons. It serves your food, no people there. Okay. They have Artemis delivers the stuff in an electric truck. It's unloaded. No one at these places are any humans involved in selling and operating the hamburgers that are being sold through the McDonald's and some other chains now in California, because the $20 an hour broke the seal, and it's done today. They opened up 10 places, and it was overwhelming, and it was 100 to 1,000% more efficient than having people. And all those stores that had people, they're not going. They're going to these because they can go in and get out in 5 minutes. Perfect meal every time. The other thing I wanted to point out is that they also, the same guy who did the article, pointed out in the next 5 to 8 years, the electric vehicles won't be used. It'll be hydrogen, because in certain countries right now, they're already producing hydrogen cars. You don't have to worry about the batteries. You don't have to have the chips from China. You don't have to have the disposal. You don't have to have the big stations. And they're already going to outpace and get rid of electric cars within the 8 to 10 years. And the industry here in the United States is what they said, the auto industry will be gone. Just what you were saying, Gilbert.
No, I apologize, but let me correct you on one thing.
I just happened to read that today in the Wall Street Journal, and they had a couple.
But remember, the way that the even hydrogen work is that when they basically they burn the hydrogen, they create electricity that's stored in a battery that runs the car.
yeah, so all hydrogen cars are thereby electric cars because they need the battery to store the electricity.
But that's not the point. The point is, the first point that I mentioned relates to, if you increase the cost of labor, you're going to accelerate the process. And that's exactly what you were mentioning. The minute you go beyond that process, people would migrate toward technology faster. Not that they won't get there, but they go there faster. But when you're dealing with robotics, and if you look at, for example, even garments that are made in, for example, China or Taiwan or other areas, all of it is basically designed by robotics, designed with artificial intelligence, and they're machines that cut hundreds and hundreds of them in one shot. In a matter of 5 minutes, they cut maybe 200 suits. So this level of automation, obviously, still the cost of labor is low in those countries. And that's why the labor is being used. So this process, when the artificial intelligence and machine learning language and sensors that they put into these robotics, and remember, they talk to one another also. So, and they don't sleep. So when you have a particular worker that has basically connection to the network of other robots and other services, or connected to your electrical grid, connected to your TV, radio, refrigerator. It knows exactly what you have, what you don't have. It creates an environment where when the cost of that robotics become low enough, it would eliminate a lot of work, basically. So the question really becomes, first of all, my audience should be kids that are going to school today and to universities, not to go after basically jobs that will not be there, and they don't think with that education you can get ahead. And you would be working toward a goal. You should plan your future. And unfortunately, most of us are on later in life, and these upheavals will not affect us. But this generation X and Z that are coming to market are going to be facing those. And if they don't understand the process of these laws and how they can be used to regulate that transition, the transition would occur properly. Because we have experimented with distribution of wealth that has never worked. And imagine right now the industrial complex and basic globalist companies that exist. Imagine right now they're at the mercy of the countries that provide the labor to them. Now imagine that they would even not be subject to countries and their labor. They can produce, robots can produce more robots. So the question really goes back of, you would have an environment where the industrialist and the globalist would be running the world, and no government can even fathom to challenge them. So this transition has to occur and make sure that the capitalism is regulated in such a way that the transition occurs properly and there is enough jobs for everyone to make a living. So
we mentioned a few points here, and I just wanted to, just for memory's sake, did we read this quote number 5 already, or no?
No,
so I think this is a very important quote, which of course I would say the context of it would help us a lot given this, but there's a lot of quotes that talk about abandoning the world and detaching ourselves from the world. So I find this quote very particularly cogent given the subject we're talking about. If we could have a reader for this quote. Well, I can read this unless Jeremiah, you could, it's nice to have a change of voice.
Arya unmuted himself. Maybe he
Arya, yes.
Oh,
please, Arya.
Know ye that by the world is meant your unawareness of him who is your maker, and your absorption, and not else but him, the life to come. On the other hand, signifieth the things that give you a safe approach to God, thou glorious, incomparable. Whatsoever deterreth you in this day from loving God is nothing but the world. Flee it, that ye may be numbered with the blessed.
Yeah, so clearly here, the materialism, which is the world. Sorry?
I would appreciate making a point about this. This is something that's of particular importance to me personally, and it's of course my opinion on this. Nonetheless, what we've been discussing today and what we are talking about when we read the Baha'i writings, we're focusing on something that's, again, different than what everyone else is talking about. That's how we provide the solution to what the world is asking for and unfortunately hasn't been using to today. So we spoke about, for example, the automation of what's going on. If we're focusing on the accumulation of wealth to be solely for its accumulation, as was discussed, we had mentioned this one Persian king in the past who accumulated so much wealth. That's clearly not what we should be doing with our intentions. At the same time, we do need to accumulate wealth as a tool to do what we need to get done. So there is an extent to which wealth is important, but here, this awareness of God, who was our maker, and our absorption in the things that are godly, that is virtuous, that is how can we help society, how can we improve those around us, how can we provide solutions to the problems that we need right now. In the case of business, how can we provide technical resolutions that we can get paid and also propagate it forward. I'd like to point something out really quick, which a lot of people don't realize when we're worshiping money, or we need money to survive. If we can't survive without money, there is another way where it has happened multiple times. People who believe in an objective are willing to sacrifice their time and energy and effort for free to do something they believe in. I think people forget this because we live in a transactional society at the moment. But I will promise you, and every single one of you is to here today has probably already experienced this. When you have a friend who is working with you, when you have someone who cares about you, if you have a mother or father or a significant other who cares about you, it's very likely they're doing something for you that isn't requiring money from you, but they're still paying for it out of pocket. It's their money, but they're giving it as a bounty to you, a gift. But this gift is really helping you. It's really, really important. I'm only mentioning this that when we think about being aware of God, when we absorb ourselves in things of God, we are drawing closer to God in the sense that we are reflecting his attributes. We're drawing closer to God in the context that we are living a better life, we're happy, and we're not living a hellish existence. At the same time, although transactions are important to be made and by no means should be divorced from our lives, not every single instance in the world can be covered by a transaction. Not every single instance can be covered by a regulation or law. There is a saying from the founding fathers of America, I believe it was John Adams, stating that these laws, the Constitution, was created for a moral society. Without a moral society, laws cannot function, because no matter how moral you think you are, if you have an immoral system, the system will only propagate what it desires to propagate, which may not be what it was created to do. Nonetheless, if we think about this and take a step back, what we love guides what we do. What we love guides what we spend on. What we decide we need is what we will focus our time on. So I believe, as my personal approach to this quote comes to me, that really speaks to me, is the idea if I am going to focus on the teachings of God, and I'm going to put myself away from the world, I'm going to divorce myself from the world in the context of its pursuits, the desires that the consumer economy tries to embed in my mind and my heart, so I buy into it, and then therefore I spend more money, and therefore because I spend more money I need to make more money, and I'm perpetually in a cycle of poverty that I create for myself of my own volition. I can choose to not get involved in that system, and I can choose to spend my resources on something that's probably a lot cheaper, where I get to spend it on me and my family and my loved ones and those that I'm trying to actually help. I'm only mentioning this in this context because if at an individual level we can think this way, in the realm of large corporations, yes, automation is good, and I don't think we should get rid of it, and I don't think of it as a threat. I think that what we are taught as not just people who live in the United States, but people who are also trying to be godly, we need to create new businesses. We need to have new ideas. We need to create new things that isn't just about people buying them, but it's about solving problems that we actually have. And it's funny because we don't have this quote here, but we can find it another time. I believe Shoghi Effendi in Advent and Divine Justice or World Order of Baha'u'llah, he mentions that we are going to, as a human society, as we mature, we're going to find new resources where we didn't see them before. So just taking a step back and looking at things, you know, for electric cars, for all good that they are, there's a lot of lithium ion batteries that are going to be going either into the trash can or someplace. We need to think about recycling these things. And as much as automation is important, the collection business isn't well automated yet. Sure, automated cars is an idea, but we still need to bring people to put stuff into those cars. And who knows, maybe we'll have it for a century and that too will be replaced. But if we know anything about industry in the past several decades, it's that change has been happening and it's going to continue happening. So I think that our principal resolution right now, rather than focusing on how much we're in dire need of achieving certain things and we're so, we're falling short of that. I think as looking at this moral teachings that the Baha'i writings are providing us, if we focus on this, it will produce in us and whoever is adopting it, a person who is looking to learn so they can serve society. Because as Baha'is, we believe work in the spirit of service is worship. So if I am working in a spirit of service, I'm worshiping God. So I'm going full circle here. I think that it would be very important if we look at this quote that we think not focusing on how we're going to lose industry, but how we have, as each and every single one of us here attends, the opportunity to create a new industry. I hope everyone here can contemplate that.
Sounds like we got a better version of Shark Tank, man.
Well, that's the thing. Right now, because of all this automation, we are being forced out of necessity to create new means of making business. And it's not just because it's a good thing to do, it's because our lives depend upon it. Our livelihoods depend upon it. If we cannot produce something to survive, people will be poor. People will not just be poor, they will not survive because they have no money to pay for food. There's going to be a huge upheaval. So we do need to focus, as it's extremely valuable for society, how can we serve others? And Baha'u'llah provides us the solution. So if we focus on service to others and how we can produce something that can help solve problems in our society, in our world, if we can find a need, we can fill that need. But we need to actually think about working hard to do it. That's it. Mr. Hakim, you're muted if you're talking.
Sorry. So here we have the world defined when all your attention goes into material possession. That means that it moves you away from God. So these are really very interesting process that you shouldn't accumulate worldly things or material things just for the sake of having it. You can produce those goods and services to make sure that you augment civilization, you help society to progress. So the question really is the issue is not just to leave it alone, but if your concentration is accumulation of wealth, obviously you're not gonna be aware of your maker. That's basically what is proposing. So absorption is odd else but him. So
what does that mean? If you could explain that. I mean, to you, what does it mean to you in your personal application in your life?
Well, this is the whole point. the whole process of producing goods and services not to maximize your profit. It's the question of helping people to get a better return on these investment they make. So you're producing a better product for them. You make sure that if you're producing, you're selling it at the price and propagation of those goods and services, so people can take advantage of it. So these are really key elements which needs to be addressed from perspective of not generating basically wealth for the sake of having wealth, but generating wealth would be a byproduct of process improvement in other people's lives.
A quick question for you. That's a great idea. A byproduct, wealth being a byproduct of benefiting others. But my question to you is, can you also see it as generating wealth? Can you see it as generating wealth to improve the resource count to help others? So
of course, that's what you need to do. Just give me 2 seconds, please.
Sure.
Let's take the conversation. I need to do something.
Sure. So quick question for the audience. As Mr. Hakim just mentioned, there's this idea of generating wealth, which is a byproduct of providing something that's a service. We agree. I think, and maybe the group can provide some other ideas on this. I think we can agree that is extremely valuable, this idea, to be entertaining this. My question is, in addition to that, what do we think about focusing on the generation of wealth for the sake of employing tools that are needed to be paid for to further the cause, which may be, again, to further humanity, say, to space, further humanity to live on the ocean or what have you, to develop ocean colonies. You need to reinvest. It's heavy investment cost. You need to reinvest all that money into production of what the goal is.
Yeah, the reason is very simple. You can't take it with you anyways, and you can't consume it either. So the question.
I'm taking it a different route. I'm saying about the common investment into something and working hard into something to produce most of the profit you can to create something that will be for future generations. What of that?
No, of course. That's the whole point of it, is, first of all, gives you resources to do stuff that governments are not doing. And actually, they did a study where they were taking, for example, food banks, or they're doing kitchen, soup kitchens, and they found out the faith-based initiatives are 10 times more effective than government managed services. And the reason is because they do that because they think it's duty for them to help the poor. This study was done in the United States. And that's why, charity through this faith-based institution yields more outcome than government setting up bureaucracies to help people without any basic
so you're saying faith-based charities can be utilized to administer to the needs of the poor better than government administration?
Oh, yeah, this is a study that was done many years ago. And
so what about all the embezzlement that we found that a lot of faith-based institutions engage in? A lot of people have uncertainty when you have mega churches with very rich leaders, clergy members, that they have, say, a private jet and so forth.
No, of course. Yeah, that's a different story. But many of those, they spent a lot of the resources on the poor as well. So it's not just the heads are, and look, there are bad apples everywhere. The question is whether they're monitored properly or not.
So you're saying that in the context of this type of thing, faith-based administration of services, it could or should be monitored by government to make sure they're doing what they say they're doing.
Of course, but they do. They get audited too. It's not just
So you're saying despite these audits that faith-based institutions receive, you still have these bad apples that make
No,
off.
of course, it's always when there are humans involved and greed is involved, you cannot predict the outcome. But the whole point I was trying to make, in many environments, even New York City in 1976, I was here maybe a couple of years, they went bankrupt because of this government infusion of creating basically services for the poor, and the administering it was costing more than the money that was getting to the people.
So we're hearing a lot about government institutions and also faith-based institutions failing. And ultimately speaking, if you look at the business world right now, that too is teetering on collapse every single time, every decade passes, some new disaster happens. What is it that, as people who are investigating these writings now, that we can decide upon to try to be solutions to the problem, if at all?
Well, this is the whole point. If you're a truthful, now do you see truthfulness in any layer of the society today, whether it's in politics, art, music, education? You see, everybody is pushing their own narrative, and there is no limit. So when you're looking at, for example, education related to society is moving toward irreligion or anti-religion, that's where it's moving. And the consequences are what we see. Embezzlement is occurring at a higher degree. Abnormality, bubbles would get created in the economy, as it did in 2008, which it blew up. All they did, both Congresses, whether it was left or right, they colluded. They passed a law to give more leeway to banks to enter basically secondary market for goods and services, and basically subpar or subprime mortgages. And what ended up happening is that because the interest rate was so low, there were, at the time, I'm not sure if you guys remember this, there was a kid, 20-year-old, he had 3 houses, and he bought these 3 houses for hundreds of thousands of dollars with a credit card. He didn't have any capital at all. So these abnormalities occurred. How did this occur? Is because the agent that was valuing the house, because he could sell the mortgage at a premium to somebody else, he falsified the value of the house. So the assessor falsified it. Then he went to the bank agent. The bank agent looked the other way, and the down payment was, because of the value of the house, they gave them a mortgage more than the value of the house. And this process occurred, and then they monetized these mortgages and they sold it into other countries as a premium, because in Japan at the time, the interest rate was negative. The bank was charging you to keep your money in the bank. Now, if somebody comes and offers you 5% return on your investment, a lot of those banks just, gobbled up these fictitious subprime mortgages. And it was to a degree that the whole economy of the world The whole banking system of the world was infected. And all because both left and right colluded to pass that law that allowed banks to enter these shady transactions.
But the irony of this is where you may know some Baha'i realtors in the community. There's a lot of those, especially in Florida. It's a very common profession. You'll find realtors who, at the time these things were happening, some of them were truthful, and they would say, look, you can't afford this mortgage. It's very obvious you can't afford this mortgage. You shouldn't buy this house.
No, of course, but remember, this wasn't real sort of at all. This was a banking system that was created a bubble, and the houses were selling from one hand to the other with 10%, 15% more, because the interest rate on the mortgage was so low, again, artificially low. And it's for about maybe 6 or 7 years, it was below zero. The interest rate was a negative interest rate. No idiot would do such a thing, but we did.
But we're on the opposite end of the spectrum now, Gilbert.
That's a different
We're
story.
at the point where things that cost a certain price 2 years ago have tripled and quadrupled.
That's because they pumped last 3.5 years, they pumped $6.2 trillion into the economy without any goods and services to cover it. That's where the inflation comes from. But that's beside the point. The point I was trying to make is that it's not that it's a problem that left created or white created the right side. The problem is ethics, and this is what we're trying to inject.
And that's a great place to leave off. And if I may,
No moral values.
yes, we need moral values. So I think it's important to reread this quote. Know ye that by the world is meant your unawareness. Know ye that by the world is meant your unawareness of him who is your maker, and your absorption in aught else but him. The life to come, on the other hand, signifieth the things that give you a safe approach to God, the all-glorious, the incomparable. Whatsoever deterreth you in this day from loving God is nothing but the world. Flee it, that ye may be numbered with the blessed. What a beautiful quote. If someone wants to give a closing prayer, we can close for today.
Sounds good.
John, can I say something, Alapa? Would you please
At the moment, no. We got to close. It's a
one
prayer
quick
time.
thing.
It's a hard spot.
Yes, I
We
understand.
have a hard stop at 9:30. We went
Okay.
over.
Kitab Aqdas, note number 56. Please refer to that. Kitab Aqdas, note 56. Read it and you see what you mentioned, what Mr. Hakim is saying is exactly it. Okay?
Thank you, Mama Pills.
Thank you.
That's John's mother for anyone watching this after the fact. That's why he was teasing her. Okay, I will say the closing
I feel
prayer.
very happy about
to your
that.
mom.
I will say the closing prayer. Thank you. Oh my God, thou seest me in my loneliness and weakness, occupied with the greatest undertaking, determined to raise thy word among the masses and to spread thy teachings among thy peoples. How can I succeed unless thou assist me with the breath of the Holy Spirit? Help me to triumph by the host of thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmations, which alone can change a gnat into an eagle, a drop of water into rivers and seas, and an atom into lights and suns. O my Lord, assist me with thy triumphant and effective might, so that my tongue may utter thy praises and attributes among all people, and my soul overflow with the wine of thy love and knowledge. Thou art the omnipotent and the doer of whatsoever thou willest.
Excellent. Thank you very much for everyone. Hopefully we see everyone next week, same time.